So I'm going to talk about our focus for week 2, and that is our balance intro. So in week 1, we just wanted you to get on your hands. Spending more time on your hands was going to help condition your wrists, condition your shoulders because it's very heavy, but also condition yourself, because when you go upside down and the blood rushes to your head, it can be quite an experience and quite uncomfortable. So just spending time upside down is going to help condition you for being in a handstand. The more you can focus on the difficult things like balance, the easier it will be as you aren't focusing on the discomfort as much. Okay, so for week 2, we're going to talk about some elements of balance. Week 3, we're going to take that a bit further, and then week 4, we're going to look at trying to get you to 5 to 10 seconds of balance. Those are our focuses for the rest of our 28-day challenge. So if we look at this person here, and they have what we call a balance window that looks like this. They don't have very much room in that balance window. So what this means is, if let's say our center of gravity is where that green dot is there, it's where the weight of their legs and the weight of their torso comes together at once, it'll be close towards the hips. Let's say it's that green dot. If that center of gravity comes behind the hands, or let's say outside the balance window, he's going to fall out into underbalance. So this is his hands, head, chest is going this way, so he's going to fall into underbalance. If he comes this way, outside of the balance window, he's going to fall into overbalance. So we want to take our balance window, as you get better, from very narrow to, let's remove his head. Oh, sorry, bring his head back. We want to bring that balance window to being even bigger, because as you get better, your balance window will get bigger, and that way you have more room to play with one way or the other before you actually fall. Now, ultimately, we want to spend as much time in balance as possible to develop your ability to be balancing. The more time you're on your hands and less on your feet, the more energy you're spending developing your balance instead of getting into the handstand. That kick-up is important. We've done some work on that. But for now, we want to look at actually balancing. Okay, let's look at a couple different positions. This is a very common starting position. So he has his wrists, elbows, shoulders, and hips. We have our next position, which is wrists, straight arms to shoulders, controlled body through hips, and then we have a more advanced position. So the big factors we want to look at in each of these positions is going to be the wrists, shoulders, and hips. So if we compare it to here, we've got number 1, the wrists. With the wrists, if he's going to fall into overbalance, so if he's moving this way, then he's going to squeeze down through the wrists, which is pushing this way, which pushes his body this way. So when he goes into overbalance, he pushes down through the fingers, which pushes his body this way, which helps keep him inside his balance window. If we are going the other way into underbalance, then our person will use for now, we'll use his shoulders, pull them forward. As his weight comes one way, he moves his weight the other way, and it'll look like this, coming into this position where you pull your shoulders forward and then come out with the hands. So how the shoulders play into the handstands, they are stopping your feet from falling and your torso from falling this way by contracting through here. But if we are in this straight alignment position, they don't have to work very hard. So a lot of the time in handstands, in all these examples, there is some flexion through the shoulders, so they need to work very hard, or some extension, I should say. They have to work very hard to make sure you don't fall back down, where this one is the least work for the shoulders, which means you can focus more on the wrists in terms of balance. Then the hips. We use the hips to contract through the legs, keep them still, keep the core tight and braced. And the tighter that is, you will see as we look at this example, the easier it is to balance as you have less moving parts and it gives you a bigger balance window. So if we draw this guy's balance window and here, and we do the same for this one, let's remove this bit. Okay, so 1 wrist, 2 shoulders, 3 hips. We look at this person. This is a very common shape at first. It's going to be, maybe we don't have the strength to push our shoulders or push through the shoulders all the way straight. So we tend to bend the elbows. Very common in guys where we use our strength from overhead pressing in the gym as opposed to our strength and mobility through our shoulders. It's a very common position for guys because we'd struggle to get the arms into that tall overhead position. And that's where the bend in the elbows come. You planche and lean forwards, but if you don't have the wrist mobility, that's where the bend in the elbow comes. And the rest of the body goes back behind in order to keep your center of gravity, which let's mark it like this, over your hands. Your center of gravity always has to be over your hands. But their balance window now is very small. If any part of their body comes out of their balance window, they're going to fall into underbalance or into overbalance. So as you get better and you start pushing taller, that's going to give you a bigger balance window. However, this gets very heavy in the shoulders and you are still using the entirety of your balance window. But if there are less moving parts, so let's say his feet come this way or his shoulders come in front this way, there's a bit more room than we have in this one. I've actually drawn this a bit narrower than I have this one. So there's a bit more room to play around with, but this is still very difficult and not very much room to play with in terms of balance. You can see we compare it to this one. They have all the way over here they can come, and they have all the way over here that they can come whilst maintaining that balance. Their balance window is much bigger. So when you're in a straight line compared to these other positions, there is a lot more room to fall out of balance and correct it and save it than there is with these other positions where there's a lot less room to fall out of balance. So balancing isn't always being in the perfect position, it's falling out of it and then correcting it and constantly correcting, making sure you don't fall out of your balance window. So this one, very useful for training underbalance, because the likelihood is when you start losing strength in your shoulders, your body starts coming a bit more like this. So your hands, shoulders come further forward, your legs come further this way into a planche. And then when that happens, you're going to fall this way. So that this drill, where you get better and better at that, you're going to be strengthening yourself to stop falling into underbalance. And it's a way that you can move into overbalance as you start falling that other way. So that's a very useful position and drill to use, which we're going to bring in week 3 with our more balanced section. Now let's look at this one, the tuck. Now there are 2 different tuck shapes. This is what my one looks like a bit more because I'm less mobile through the shoulders, but then a better one will, I say better, one with someone with more mobility will look a bit more like this, which requires less through the wrists and less through the shoulders because they're more mobile through the lower back. They can bring their center of gravity closer to on top of their hands. We need that to be in balance. But let's go over why you need more strength through the shoulders. So ultimately, and I know it's going to be very small here, there is a bigger angle here than there is here for the shoulders, which means the shoulders have to work a lot harder. But in order to bring this weight forwards, because if I was in a straight wrist position and it looked a bit more like this. There is more weight on this side of the wrists, they are going to fall this way. So I need to come forward in the wrist, which is going to get very heavy in the wrists, very heavy in the shoulders, where this one is more heavy in the wrist still, but less heavy in the shoulders. But the hip flexors are working a lot more. So this better position uses the hips more than it does use the shoulders, where this one, we're using the shoulders more than we are using the hips. So both are fine, both are very, very heavy, but they are more advanced skills that we're not going to be worrying about just now. I just wanted to show you that the balance window in these ones gets smaller than our straight line position, but a lower center of gravity also helps. But anyway, okay, so the point is with this is our wrists have to work more and require more mobility when our weight comes forward into overbalance. So they're going to be working a lot there. And when we're coming towards underbalance, it's our shoulders that are going to be doing more work, because you're going to have a more extreme angle when you're coming into underbalance. So your shoulders have to do more work. And the hips help keep everything together and help give you a bigger balance window to play with. Bigger balance window gives us more time on our hands, less time falling on the floor. So now we're going to look at hand position. So I'm going to use two examples here. Firstly, we have back to wall. So hands close to the wall, back to wall. If I come up to the wall here, my head's here, feet are here, hips are here. So as soon as my center of gravity goes beyond my hands, I'm going to fall. So if I'm really close to the wall with my hands, I don't have much room to squeeze through the floor with the fingers to bring your weight this way before you fall to the floor. Because again, as soon as you go beyond this green line, you're falling to the floor. Whereas if I have a bigger window, so let's draw the same person, but the hands a bit further away from the wall, and they go to there, hips here, head here. And now I'm putting it in the same place, right next to the wrists. I have all this extra room to squeeze and come to, I can come all the way to here with the feet, let go, and still fall back to the wall. So I have all this extra room to play with in my balance work. So this drill, back to wall drill, where we push straight, we squeeze the fingers into the floor to bring the hips away from the wall and the hands away from the wall. And we go to there. We go to there and then we release and go back to the wall. That's going to be very useful for developing our ability to pull ourselves out from overbalance, because they're falling towards the wall backwards. So that's developing our ability to pull out of overbalance and strengthening your wrists at a better mobility, or a more of a mobility requirement position, a required position, than if we were closer to the wall. So this means we're going to spend a lot more energy actually getting back up to the wall because our hands are too close to the wall. If I did the same thing with back to wall, let's draw the close first and then, chest to wall. So chest to wall, we need hands facing the other way. We come up, 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 and feet in. Head is there, hips, and then I do the opposite. So hands away from the wall now, and I come, it's a bit too far away, hands further away, and I come up, up, up to there, hips. Okay, so with this one, our balance window, once again, just beyond the hands. If I'm closer to the wall, I don't have very far that I can lean forward through the shoulders, as we talked about in how we planche forward to come into, move ourselves towards overbalance, stop us falling into the wall, which is our underbalance, sorry. So I don't have as much room. I can bring the shoulders forward before I fall. Where here, I've got all that extra room that I can come forward before I actually fall into overbalance and then have to climb back to the wall and reset all over again. So we want to have our hands further away from the wall, because if it's too close to the wall, it's not going to give us much room to play in and to actually work on our balance. So as far as balance drill is concerned, we want to have our hands between 1 and 2 rulers lengths away from the wall, so about 30 to 60 centimeters. However, you'll see this position looks a lot like this one. Hands close to the wall in a chest to wall position is very good for your posture, and it's a good drill to use to develop that posture, which is why you'll always finish with a max hold, chest to wall, hands as close to the wall as you can comfortably. It's going to be hard if your mobility is not there, but it's ultimately what's going to give you a better position later on. Now we talk about using the wall. So once again, let's look at back to wall. So this is the likes of kick-ups. So if I have, we talked about hands further away, which is useful, and I am in this position, hips here, I'm still very close to my balance window. This is what people have quite a lot. They tend to actually have legs lay apart here, and they curve back around like so. I am very close, so if I try and squeeze down through the hands and send myself this way, my body's going to come break that balance window and I'm going to fall down to the ground. So we want to make sure we try and mimic this position as much as possible. So we want to push ourselves tall, legs together, hips, head. The head's inside the shoulders now, but you know what it is. So we want to have this taller position so that when we squeeze, we have more room to come off the window off the wall without breaching that balance window. So we want to push tall and still brace and try and find that position. It's going to be harder and heavier for the wrists, especially as you can see a more of an extremely small angle in this push tall position. So that's where, if that's too difficult, you come a step closer to the wall, and if it's still too difficult, you come a step closer again and a step closer. So it's harder on the wrists and it's heavier, but that's going to give you more of a good balance development, stopping yourself falling into overbalance. So that's how we use the wall for overbalance. Now, if we talk about underbalance, underbalance still, but chest to wall, I have my hands this way and I come up and body into the wall and legs up. So this is quite a common position to start with. Feet there. Bam, 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 bam. If I bring my shoulders in front of that position, which are very heavy, it's going to get heavy on the wrists, and likely we're going to get so heavy in the wrists and the shoulders, we can't hold that from a bent body position like so. If we can, we want to get to, let's come a bit further away, we want to get to a straight position with it either looking like this, the hips are a bit lower there, either looking like this, so we have one leg straight up, because that helps bring our hips over, and one leg pulling into flexion, so this leg's pulling this way to drive our hips over this way. That then gives us more room to play with. Let's draw the balance window on that side. So yeah, the idea with this one is, in order to get your body weight in center of gravity over your hands and into your balance window, you're going to have to come very far beyond your hands, and it's going to get very, very heavy and hard to maintain. We can push to a straight position. You then don't have as much weight to bring over this way, so you've got a lot more room to play with once again than if you were in a less tall position. So this is where the hips are very, very important in the chest to wall drill. You push into the wall, which moves your hips away from the wall, which then brings your weight on top of your hands, bam, 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 on top of your hands, which gives you that point of balance. Now, once you've found that point of balance, so let's draw that one quickly. You have found your point of balance and you're inside your balance window, but your feet are still against the wall. Your feet are still against the wall. This is where we want to be. What people tend to do when they get close to here is they do a little kick into the wall and push themselves off. If you do that, you're sending momentum this way, which leads you to having to squeeze harder with your hands, and you're either going to fire yourself back into the wall or you're going to kick too hard and go over. That is unnecessary momentum that we don't need in order to work on our balance. So this is where, when we get to this position and we're in balance or close to, patience is what you need. You just need to stay there and hold it and breathe and try and count to 5 seconds, then count to 10 seconds. If you hold that for time, then you're getting better at being in that position. Your wrists are going to get stronger at being in balance, where if you keep adding those unnecessary kicks, it's going to be harder for you to actually spend any time there that is useful. So with our points, hand position, we want to be away from the wall in order to give ourselves a bigger window that we can work in without falling down and wasting all that energy to come back up again. And then using the wall, we don't want to kick off the wall. We want to drift off the wall. We want to use our body line in order to get the most out of how we use the wall. So that is the likes of squeezing through the hips for overbalance and for underbalance, to make sure that we're not going too far one way or too far the other, and mean that we can actually work on the areas which are important to help us balance in those respective directions. And then finally, with the kick up, which you have all been practicing quite a lot, when you kick up to the wall, back to wall, and you get to a position that looks like this, that is the golden spot, because you are mostly center of gravity, or your center of gravity is inside your balance window. You've got the wall close for support, but you're coming up, catching it there, spending maybe a second there, and then slowly coming down. You will know that if you hit this wall hard, you have overkicked. If you don't find the wall, you have underkicked. If your hands are too close to the wall, once again, and you kick up here, then there is no way that you can actually find that point of balance, because once again, that balance window is close to the wrist. If you're too close to the wall, you're not giving yourself enough room to find the balance. So we need to be far enough away from the wall. Hand position is going to be really important in all of these wall-based drills. And then when we talk about using the wall, we want to use it for the kick up softly. We want to find it, touch it softly. And then when you kick up and you are not even touching the wall, then you've done a successful freestanding handstand kick up or entry, successful freestanding handstand entry, but it's still good to have the wall there, because just because you got it right once, we need to get it right 5 out of 10 times, then 10 out of 10 times, not 1 out of 10 times. So you keep using the wall. I still go back to the wall for my kick-up drills, especially as I'm warming up, just to kind of make sure I know how much power I need to give to get to that right position. So that is our intro about how we use the wall, the hand positioning when using the wall, and ultimately how our wrists, shoulders, and hips are so important to developing good balance ability and awareness in our body in space. If you have any questions, ask, let me know, and I will answer. Now, in the next week, we'll talk about these other components.